It's the Fitness Lab Pittsburgh podcast, a new episode every week. A podcast about movement, part of making your life complete. Fitness Lab Pittsburgh, aka FitLabPGH, brings you interviews with people in the Pittsburgh area who understand movement is part of what makes life complete. Looking for a new movement idea or just want to hear interesting stories about people who make movement a priority? This is the podcast for you. Whether you consider the gym, dojo, or fitness studio your third place, or just want to learn more about movement, activity, and fitness to enhance your life, give FitLabPGH a listen. We interview locals in the Pittsburgh area who make Pittsburgh a great place to move. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Subscribing is free and gives you notifications when we release new episodes. Each podcast episode will be long enough to pique your interest and short enough to hold your attention. Have an idea for an episode? Know somebody we should interview? Or just want to connect with us? Drop us an email, fitlabpgh@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at fitlabpgh. Already a fan of FitLabPGH? Check out our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast for movement professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers weekly interviews with movement professionals featuring topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you enjoy our next interview, starting now. FitLabPGH is back with another podcast interview. We are here on the South Side. We are in a coffee shop, so I've told today's guest that every other interview that we've had in a coffee shop so far for FitLabPGH has been an excellent one. After chatting with him on the phone and hearing that he uses the same bike shop that I do, West Liberty Bikes or West Liberty Cycles, I am perfectly confident that this will be another one. This is an example of what you find just by serendipity as far as an interesting podcast. I was in West Liberty Bikes, and after petting Bella, the shop dog, if you haven't checked her out, check her out. I kind of looked at where all the brochures for bike races and running races and triathlons were, and here was this colored brochure for something called Walkatop. And my initial thought was, what the heck is Walkatop? And it turns out in Emerald View Park, which I had heard about a couple of years ago from a client of mine is having great hiking, there is a Walkatop. There is a hike of various distances that we're going to talk about to raise awareness for mental health issues and memory of a young man who unfortunately took his life a few years ago. We are fortunate enough to have his uncle, Tom Brown, here to talk to us. And I think he has an interesting story about how this hike started and his life of activity. Before we find out a little bit more about Tom, if you could just give us a little bit of information, Tom, kind of the 30-second spiel of Walkatop, and we'll get into that in more detail in a few minutes. So thanks for joining FitLab Pittsburgh. And for those of people who don't listen to the whole thing, what's Walkatop?
Walkatop is a hike that's on September 16th. It's put together by my family's foundation, the Thomas Brown Alton Foundation. If you go on ShowClicks, if you Google Walkatop, you can register now, early registration. There's several choices, difficulties, and lengths. And we have two guided tours this year, and one is a 5-mile guided tour led by Dr. Eva Sims from Duquesne University, who is an avid hiker and a naturalist by heart. And we also have a 9-mile guided tour from Catherine Hooninen, who is with the Mount Washington Development Council, and she was there at the ground floor of the development of the park. And she has a lot of photos, and she's just a great person. So we're looking forward to those two.
And obviously the purpose of this is to raise awareness for mental health and in memory of your nephew. What I thought was really interesting when I first talked to you on the phone is your family has grown up on Mount Washington, and you could probably tell stories about Emerald View Park before it existed. So I suspect that there are probably some neat views and things that people who just went and hiked in the park wouldn't get. So if they're not doing it for the right reason and to donate a little money to raise awareness for mental health, they're probably going to see some views that they've never seen before. Is that correct?
Oh, you're not going to get the views that you're going to get on Grandview Avenue or on the incline that everybody has on their iPhone. You're going to get a completely different view from a completely different angle. It'll be framed by trees. It's going to be the Ohio River Valley. It'll be the Banksville Valley, which is pretty wooded. It's kind of surprising. And it's not going to be easy. There's a lot of climbing, and it's a lot of fun.
For people who have maybe done the step trek, I know you mentioned to me that your sister, if I'm correct, was one of the people involved in organizing. So people have done the step trek. I think if you do both routes, it's somewhere around 6 miles. How would you define the difficulty of the Walkatop compared to the step trek?
Well, it's not going to be even, Steven. You're not going to be on asphalt. You're not going to be on concrete steps. You're going to have to pay a little bit of attention because you're going to be on the hillside. And so that's going to add a little degree of difficulty. And some of the altitudes are going to be daunting. We've identified 5 good climbs. So if you're a casual hiker, we have the hike for you. If you're an avid hiker, we have that too. We identify them just like you would ski routes. So when you register it on Grandview Avenue, directly across the Duquesne Incline, where we have free parking, we'll have a big board up, and we will identify the trail difficulties just like they do ski trails.
I know one of the things with FitLabPGH and also my other podcast, Moving to Live, that always interests me is the stories of the people that we interview. And both of the podcasts are podcasts about movement, because movement is part of what makes your life complete. And I'm always curious about the people that we interview. Everybody that we interview are movers or related to movement, and there's stories of how they got there. What I found is you can kind of divide them into 2 categories. You've got the one category that's just kind of what they do all their life. When they were kids, mom and dad said, get the heck out of the house and go move around. Maybe they played Little League. Maybe they just played pickup street ball or things like that, but they always moved. And it seems like the largest percentage of the other people who didn't move a lot as children, whether it was organized athletics or not, were individuals who maybe went to college and really experienced the college experience for the first year or 2, and then realized, oh, wow, I've gained some weight, or I don't feel really good. I need to do something about this. So which category do you fall in? Are you a lifetime mover, or are you somebody who at some point when you were a young adult or an older adult said, I need to start moving again?
Oh, no, I'm a lifetime mover.
And I know you said you grew up and your family grew up on Mount Washington. Was it because of where you were and your parents just said, get outside and play because we don't want you in the house? Or what was it that made you start moving at a young age, if you can remember that?
Oh, yeah. The Mount was a great place to grow up. We had great parks. I'm a boomer, so there were thousands of us. And we ran out of the house and bang, you had someone to play with. And then bang, you had someone to play hoops with. And just get into general all kind of trouble. So it was a blast. So that just never stopped.
And I know that originally when the idea for Walkatop came up, you were saying to me, because you are a cyclist, you wanted to have a bike race, but because of organizational concerns and the difficulty of that, it turned into a hike. So how does somebody, especially in Pittsburgh where there are hills, and I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek as a lifetime cyclist since I'm 7 or 8, how does somebody from Pittsburgh become a cyclist? Did you have a bike as a kid, and what was it that took it from that to you? I know from talking to you that you commuted to the north side from Mount Washington for your job for many years.
Yeah, I graduated from high school and got a job on the railroad, and with my first paycheck, I picked up my first real good bike, which was $310 at the time, and that was a princely sum. And I bought it at Buyers Mart on Penn Avenue, long defunct, and it just took me from there. It just turning that crank, the great Mandela. I mean, it just took me there, and I never let go. And I started to ride, to and from work, and I just never stopped.
And did you ever do any racing or just commuting? And then I also know that you said you've done some touring also.
Yeah, I like to do the touring. I like to do century rides. I like to bust up my time. But let's face it, you leave the house, you go for a ride. Pittsburgh's great. And really, you can't beat that, But I was never fast enough to race.
I always ask people that we interview who are related or involved in cycling, if you follow the old adage where the perfect number of bicycles is N+1, where N is the number of bicycles you currently own.
Yeah.
And I was always kind of curious because at one point in grad school, I'm kind of ashamed to admit and kind of proud to admit I had 14 bicycles in my apartment.
Whoa!
A couple of them were being held for friends, but significant number were mine. I don't have near that many now. How many bicycles do you currently own?
I got 3.
Which is a good number. It's a number that says you're a serious cyclist, but not a number that says you're kind of the crazy bicycle man.
No, I'm not the crazy bicycle man. And I keep them in good shape, and I've had them all for a long time.
You still have that original one that you paid $300?
No, that was framed by a company called C. Ito, and I've never seen it again. It's Japanese, and it literally broke.
For people who are cyclists in Pittsburgh, I won't expect you to give out the special ride that you don't want to tell anyone, but what's the favorite area or what's your favorite part of Pittsburgh to ride in? You've got 3 hours to go for a ride. What are you going to do?
I'm going to hit downtown Pittsburgh. I'm going to hit the North Shore. I'm going to hit Lawrenceville. I'm going to hit Allegheny Cemetery, which I absolutely love to go do hill repeats in. And I'm going to come home via the south side and up to the Mont.
And from looking at you, you're a little older, not super old, but you've been around since before the rails to trails. Have you started riding more on the rails to trails, or are you still mostly a road biker who stays on the road?
Oh, no, I use the rails to trails. It's fun. It's fun. The rail trails are great at twilight. Mm-hmm. If you don't like the crowds, come on down at about 10 after 5, and you'll have it to yourself all the way till nighttime.
And I think all of the rails to trails around Pittsburgh are one of those untapped gems that a whole lot of people don't know about. On the one hand, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want people to know about it. On the other hand, if the goal is to get people to move more, man, I know sometimes during the week I'm out on some of them at 7 or 8 in the morning, and it's like you said at twilight. There's not a whole lot of people there as compared to the weekend or on a Saturday afternoon.
That's correct, and I really like it.
I'm always interested with the people that we interview for FitLab Pittsburgh because part of it is the events and part of it is the stories. My 2 favorite questions to ask are, first of all, for you, most unusual or interesting or most fun movement activity that you've done in your life, and would you do it again? Or maybe in your case, it's a place that you've ridden that you haven't had the opportunity. So favorite thing that you've done?
Commuting on foot to my job from Mount Washington to the north side is my fondest memory, I think, because you do it in the bad weather, and you leave the house at night, and you hit the top of McGarter Roadway, and there's the city, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And then after you do it for a while, you realize, the seasons come like a freight train, that each day is different from each other, and I think that's like my fondest memory.
And I know people who are hearing this, there's 2 groups of people. The one group is saying, I know exactly what he means, commuting either on foot or by bike to work. And the other group is looking and saying, are you crazy in all weather? Curious, with the jobs that you've had, did some of your coworkers look at you and call you the crazy guy because you did determine or make the decision to use an alternative way of getting to work?
Well, in the beginning they did, sure, because it was a sales group. And I ran their warehouse, but sure, in the beginning they all thought that was a little bit out to lunch. But, when you get to work, you don't need a cup of coffee to get going. I mean, you're there, you're ready to go. And if they're taking you to lunch, they better be prepared to spend, a serious amount of money, because I'm going to eat everything I can. And coming home, it's great because, it's the wintertime generally. I don't ride that much in the winter like some of the hardheads I see out there. But coming home was great because, I could pick whatever route I wanted. I could take a walk up Penn Avenue if I wanted. I could go anywhere. And when I got home, I ate 2 plates of whatever she put in front of me.
And I know when we talked on the phone, we talked about how you really believe that being active for your entire life is what allows you now in retiring to continue to do the things that you want to do, just because you have a good level of fitness.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I had no idea I was doing that. I was doing it because it was fun. Yeah, but I'm lucky, and I don't think for one moment that I don't know that, at 65 I can go jump on the bike and drop down off the mountain and have fun on it. That I don't take that for granted. I know I'm lucky.
I know I do a little personal training on the side, and my selling point to a lot of my clients is, look, what you're doing now, yes, it makes you feel good now, or maybe you don't enjoy it now, but you're basically putting movement in the bank for 10, 20, 30 years down the line.
Mm-hmm. And mentally it helps too, which is why the hike for Walkatop is so important because like you said to me on the phone, it's an appropriate marriage.
I know I make no bones of being a mental health expert, but I do know that when I was in graduate school, one of my professors said that he firmly believed that for many people, if they would just get outside and walk a little bit, it could help their mental health. And even though they may still need help from medical professionals and they still may have to use various types of drugs because they did have a mental illness, the walking should be done in addition, just because there really wasn't a bad side for it from a standpoint of mental health.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it opens the carburetors and allows you to think clearly, I believe.
It's given me a lot of my ideas, including the idea for this podcast. And the story that I've told before is when I went to get my doctoral degree, I had a gentleman that I worked with who was my mentor before that. And he told my doctoral advisor, if I ever see him down in the dumps, or more likely if I was behaving like a jerk, to tell me to go out and go for a bike ride or a run. And that would probably make me easier to live with. And at the time, I was kind of like, how could you say that? But now that it's 20-some years down the line, I kind of agree with them. It's very rare when I finish some sort of movement. It doesn't have to be a race, just getting out with the dogs or an easy spin. Things don't look quite as bad as they looked beforehand, and a lot of times you get some great ideas.
Absolutely. My wife would totally agree with you.
Before we get into talking more about Walkatop, because this is something that's existed, I believe this is the 4th year.
Yep.
And I was amazed when I talked to you. There's somewhere around 300 people that do it each year. So this is just a further example of Pittsburgh as a city of neighborhoods, that if you're not in a neighborhood or you're not on the lookout, you can miss out on a lot of good things. So that's one of the reasons we're doing FitLab Pittsburgh. But you gave a really good description of your favorite movement activity or thing that you enjoyed. Anything on your bucket list, movement related, that you want to do at some point in the future that you haven't made it to yet?
No, I'm really lucky. I love this town. I love the geography. I love the ecosystem that the Three Rivers provides, and the change of seasons. So no, I never thought to myself, gosh, if I could only go here and do this. I think I am here, and I think I am doing this.
And the main reason we're here is we want to raise some awareness for Walkatop, and we want to help you get a lot of people out there. We're going to be participating. You told us it's a series of hikes from, I think, 1 mile up to just under 14.
2.3 miles to just under 14.
Just under 14. So people of all ages, all ability levels.
And a kids route.
And you explained what it was, but how did it come about? Why is Walkatop in existence?
Well, because when my nephew passed on, it caught my family unawares. And he was a happy, healthy kid. And we were wondering afterwards, has any other family, has any other group experienced the same thing we did? The shock, the loss, the unanswered questions, and that's what did it. And my sisters were not going to let this pass on without some type of legacy, I assume. And I was so happy they did that, and we were able to pour our grief, our loss, and our energy into this, and that's how it came about.
And I know I've never experienced a loss like that. I can only imagine. How did it go as far as saying, we want to do something? I know a lot of times when something like this occurs, people have a memorial 5 kilometer run or something like that, or they have, some sort of a music show, depending what the person's area of interest was. This is a little bit more than that. This is multiple events that clearly are intended to allow people of different ages and different physical capabilities participate. Because if you do a 5K, there's going to be some people are going to say, well, that's too short. There's going to be other people who say that's too long. Some people are going to say, well, I don't want to run if there's going to be walkers. Walkers are going to say, I don't want to walk if there's runners. And you've got numerous events. So if you're a hardcore trail runner, from talking to you and from talking to a client of mine who's been in Emerald View Park, you can do a 13-plus mile hike/trail run and be very challenged. And if you're somebody who's just starting out, you can walk a little bit over 2 miles and say, wow, this is pretty neat. I'd like to come back next year and do the next longer distance. So how is a walk decided upon, or a series of walks to commemorate the loss of your nephew?
We like the combination. We like the idea that the walk we've made the walk as accessible for as many different people and abilities as we possibly could, because we want them to come up to registration to see the other booths we have up there. September is Suicide Awareness Month, and we want to encourage the conversation. We want to make sure that people realize that that suicide is not the closeted thing it was, specifically in the Catholic Church. I can only speak of it the way it was in the 50s and 60s, and also, we take that money and under the aegis of the Birmingham Foundation, we are able to provide assistance to groups. We like the way that the assist program works. And that we're a contributor to them. Last year we helped that Bhutanese community when they were experiencing a rash of problems with their teens. They were going to Brashear, and we were able to work with Brashear and Brashear's counselor to get programs, after-school programs set up. And we also assist Mercy Hospital, behavioral health. They have a calendar that they do, and they also had a cookbook they did one year, which I kind of liked. And so it's more about the message of, come on up, take a look,
Would it be correct to say that in addition to being in memory of your nephew, it's also to give other people or make them more aware of mental illness and make them realize that there's other people out there and there are opportunities to get help if you're not sure, you think you're alone?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know a family that doesn't have a member that is struggling one way or another. I just don't.
And sometimes it's just enough to realize, there's other people. I'm not alone.
Yes.
Turn the corner, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also, just from talking to you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's to raise awareness and said, look, mental illness is a disease. It's just like heart disease or other things. It shouldn't be a stigma or in the closet. It's not a sign of weakness. You can't just suck it up and work harder. There are some real concerns and real things that you need help for.
Well, that's why we like the ASSIST program, because the ASSIST program is not reactive, it's proactive. It's helping middle school teachers recognize emotional distress in middle school students, and we think that's huge. We think that, maybe in my nephew's case, something was going down and it was missed, and which is, listen, his mother was a registered nurse. My sister Betty is a teacher. My mom was a teacher. We didn't have our heads in the sand,
With the idea being that people with mental health issues, it isn't something that they just wake up one day and have it. It starts in childhood, or they're born with it. And the sooner that they can get help or it can be identified
and recognized,
mm-hmm. the sooner that they can be proactive about it rather than having to have a reactive experience from a family.
Exactly.
People who have never been off-road, I know with my girlfriend, the first time I took her off-road hiking, it was a adventure, to put it lightly. And I know that people do the rails to trails, people do the step trek, and from a client of mine who's a big hiker, Emerald Park is just another one of those, or Emerald View Park is another one of those just untapped wonders and beautiful places in Pittsburgh. For people who maybe are hearing this and say, boy, I'd really like to support this, I'm kind of concerned about being off-road and walking off-road. As a lifetime member of the Mount Washington community who probably knows more about that than the people who work for the Pittsburgh City Parks, kind of alleviate the concern people are going to have about falling off the mountain and ending up in the Mon.
All you really need is a good pair of running shoes, and you'll be fine. The trail's clearly defined. It's wide enough. It's never taxed. It sounds like a lot of people will be on the trail, but actually you get 300 people on the trail, and it's never packed. People have different start times, and it's clearly marked, and we have water stops, probably about 7 of them along the way, and each water stop is manned by someone who will ask you what trail, which hike are you doing, you go this way, you go that way, and we have each trail marked color-coded, and the signs are up. There's plenty of signs up, and you'll never get lost.
And I know one of the organizers is your sister, who's been involved with the Southside Step Trek. And for those of you who have done the Step Trek, you know that it is incredibly well marked and it's impossible to get lost. And if it's even 50% of that with the Walkatop, then there's no way of getting lost. And I would encourage people to come out and do that. How did you come up with the name of Walkatop?
My brother-in-law, Bob, did. We said, hey, how about a hike? How about using the trail? And we were looking for a name, and hey, we're on top of the mountain, and the Emerald View Trail rings the top of the mountain. He came up with it, and we loved it.
Coming up on the 4th year that it's been in existence, have you had people who have done this who have come to you and said, I never knew Emerald View Park existed?
Every year. Every year it's great to hear them talk about it. There's a lot of parts on that hillside that when we were kids, we used. But we've always cleaned up after ourselves.
You've kind of had your own private park for 60 plus years.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're talking to Tom Brown. He is one of the organizers of the Walkatop, which is a multi-length hike happening September 16th, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it is to raise awareness for mental health issues in remembrance of his nephew who passed on. If you are a walker, if you are a runner, if you are a person who likes to get outside, as somebody who's done the Step Trek and seen incredible views, I suspect these views are going to be at least as good, if not better, because you're going to be able to see up the Ohio Valley. I would encourage you to check out our show notes, which will have various links. 4th year coming up. They've had around 300 people each year. Is there a limit where you cap it at, like how many people? Or if they register, they can do it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Rain or shine?
Rain or shine.
We've been talking to Tom Brown. Add the Walkatop to your schedule. Tom, I want to thank you for talking about your lifetime of movement, but more importantly, your importance of recognizing, your family's recognizing that movement is part of a healthy lifestyle, mental, physical, emotional, and just having a high quality of life no matter what your age is.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. That was nice of you to say.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of FitLabPGH, brought to you by Moving to Live. Intro and exit music is Marathon Man by Jason Shaw. Check out the show notes for contact info for our latest guests, links to other information mentioned in the episode, and links to our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise for professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Your free subscription gets you notified when we release a new episode. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email us at fitlabpgh@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at fitlabpgh and like us on Facebook. If you enjoy our podcasts, please tell your friends about us and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Make FitLabPGH a go-to place to learn more about movement in the Pittsburgh area. Until next time, keep on moving.